Alex Graham Heggie. Welcome to Our Heritage. In these programs, we've been seeking as many as we can find of personal accounts of experiences in Grey County during wartime. And today I'm going to be having another guest to give us some really great insights into those experiences, local veteran and volunteer, Mr. Bob Alexander. Bob, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, so to get to take it in sort of chronological order, you were in the Second World War to start with. You were just a kid when that started, is that right?
That's correct.
How old were you at the beginning?
When it started, I'd be 9. When it's over, I'd be 15.
So what would it feel like to grow up in with that situation informing the whole world?
It's it's the way it is when you're that age. Whatever happens is the way things are.
Mm-hmm. Were you very aware of the war at that age, or?
At first, not as much. Mm-hmm. As it progressed, there was certainly things that got through to me as a young guy. Mm-hmm. 1942 would be the worst.
How so?
I was aware that was about the point in the war where things were at their worst for the Allies. Mm-hmm. Europe was pretty well overrun at that time. It was after the British had evacuated from France. Mm-hmm. It was after Pearl Harbor. So the U.S. was strongly in it. Everybody that was in it by then. Mm-hmm. And things weren't going the best.
Right. So there was that was that the stage where it's looking back on it, we know what happened, but not knowing at that time what was going to happen must have been very disturbing for a lot of people.
Well, that's at that time, I'd be 12 years old, mm-hmm. and it certainly got through to me that something very serious was going on. We didn't know how it was going to work out. We certainly hoped, and here right in Owen Sound, nothing really happened other than industrial things. A lot of guys, a lot of people were gone in the military. Mm-hmm. There were outside people brought in, for example, the Polish that were trained here.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then I understand your father was in the First World War.
That's correct.
What do you think he felt having to go through to be there for another world conflict like that?
He knew far more than I did how serious it was. He wouldn't have been eligible on account of injuries from World War I.
Oh my goodness.
I had an uncle that was a little older than him that did serve. Oh, he served in the Air Force, part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan.
Oh my word. Okay. And do you think having been through the First War, did the fact that there was now another one weigh on him a great deal, do you think? Or?
I think that the thought was, let's do what we can to ensure our side comes out on top. That was the way. Now, what they were doing and how and why and so on, I think I was a little too young to really grasp that.
Mm-hmm. But so, how did you? Your family would have been subject to things like rationing as a result. How did that bear out?
To me personally, I was very well aware of it and so on. Mm-hmm. I think my mother did an excellent job of managing that sort of thing.
Oh yes.
As a kid, everything seemed normal. I know it wasn't, but the way my family coped with it, it seemed normal.
Okay. Trying to keep, what's that expression that you always see on posters? Keep calm and carry on, sort of thing. All right, very nice. And there were things going on in town, of course, as you say. There were Polish soldiers over here in the area,
And I'm not 100% sure exactly when they arrived and when they left, but I know that there were Polish formations that served in Northwest Europe after the invasion.
And some of them would have trained up over here then.
There's a strong possibility or probability that they did.
Remarkable.
I don't even know what exact training they did.
Fair enough. No, and from our local lads at the time, I understand there was a great parade in about 1940 of the Gray and Simcoe Foresters in town. before they
Yes,
left.
I estimate that would have been probably roughly 1,200 men.
And they were parading before shipping out, were they? Or?
I think that it was something of that sort.
And I dare say they got a good crowd to see them off.
Yes, at that time, everyone backed whatever was going on, whatever way they could.
I bet. I'm trying to imagine what it'd be like to live, as you say, with that cloud of you're not sure. You hope that everything turns out okay, but you're not sure if it will yet. So it must have been.
Oh, it was way short of that. We just didn't know.
There's another. It was a funny little coincidence that. Well, I don't suppose it was entirely a coincidence that Owen Sound got a visit from the warship HMCS Owen Sound over the course of the war.
Yeah, it was built in Collingwood, and it wouldn't be too far out of its way. It was on its way down through the seaway that existed at that time. So from Collingwood to here, and then of course it would go up around the tip of the peninsula and down Lake Huron. So
Right.
it really, it would be a bit because I think they were here overnight.
Okay, and
So,
so
but
Did they
those things were way beyond me.
did they get a good reception?
I think so, yes.
They had some kind of donation made to them while they were here, I understand.
I recall seeing a washing machine being loaded on the ship, and they certainly could use that from my later experience trying to keep clean under conditions that they would be under and I served under later. I understand it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm sure they were much obliged for it. We're gonna keep on talking about it, but we're gonna take a quick break first. back. So, Bob, talking of the coming into awareness of the war as you got older, what was the news coverage like? What sort of stories do you remember?
Well, I think at that time you have to remember there was no TV.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't have it. There was CFOS was on the air at that time.
They just started around 1939, is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
The Sun-Times was very widely read then, probably more so than now.
Okay.
My family certainly followed it closely, and I can remember looking at it myself.
Mm-hmm. There was coverage of what scope? Like what did they talk? What were they able to talk about?
Well, I think that the news was managed by the authorities that were responsible for the conduct of the war, which meant that certain things were made public and certain things weren't.
Ah, okay.
But the thing that I remember is that pretty much every time they printed a copy of the Sun-Times, there were pictures in it of someone from the district that had something happen. The worst were killed or wounded or missing in action, or
right.
There wasn't a whole lot of talk about where they were and where they were going and stuff.
Okay.
That was the parts that were deleted.
Right, but they so the Sun-Times made a regular thing of putting up the names of people who'd had something bad happen to them. Then
that was on the front page. I don't think there was hardly an issue printed during the war that didn't have someone's picture on in that manner.
And that's just covering people from Grey County.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
I think their coverage area isn't changed a whole lot now
I was just
than
going
what
to say
it was then.
I was just thinking if they could do it, if they could publish somebody's picture like that just about every day, it puts it in perspective how tough it must have been out there. So.
I think that to understand that, to remember that 10% of our population was in uniform at that time.
Wow. And that across all the services, a total of 10%.
I mean, population is from just born to the oldest.
Right.
So certainly a lot of them wouldn't even qualify, but of the ones that did, that's where the 10% came from.
That's a respectable chunk.
One little thing that I remember is when I was in elementary school, in the upper grades, there were guys coming back in uniform, coming in and talking to their former teachers.
Oh, really? Okay.
That was, the school I was in at that time was Strathcona.
Okay. And would they come in to talk to the
Well,
talk to
they
the
were
classes?
they had their uniforms on and so on, and
Okay.
they obviously they were on leave, and they just came in to talk to their teachers.
Oh, it wasn't like today where they come in to talk to the class on Remembrance Day.
No,
kind of
they
thing.
just
Okay.
came in and they'd shake their teacher's hand and they'd just have a little chat in the hall or something between periods.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Okay, trying to touch base while they have
Yes,
the chance, kind of thing.
yes.
My
Yeah,
goodness.
it wasn't, they didn't talk to the class as I remember.
Okay.
I'm not saying it didn't happen, but
And that's memory I have, of course, as a kid during Remembrance Day. Is some folks from the Legion had come around to talk to us, but always wondered how long they've been. It'd be interesting to find out how long they've been doing that. Then, I guess, if you don't mind my asking, did you know anybody? You said you had an uncle who was in the Navy.
no, that was Air Force.
Oh, Air Force, pardon me. And did he come through it all right?
Yeah, he just served in Canada. I think he
Okay.
was mainly in Prince Edward Island.
Right. Okay. Oh.
That the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan took a lot of enlisted people to run it.
Ah. Understood.
They shipped people here from all over the Commonwealth.
Okay.
New
Yeah.
Zealand, Australia, India, South
wow.
Africa.
Okay. Well, and it's funny because my grandfather was in Newfoundland about at the same time, and I place I used to work, St. Kitts and Nevis in the West Indies. The guy, well, he's not Governor General anymore, but he used to be, and he was. And I was wondering because I'd read he was in the RCAF during the war, and I was wondering how that came about. That must be it, because St. Kitts is Commonwealth as
now,
well.
I want to remember one thing. Newfoundland didn't become part of Canada until
right, I'd forgotten that.
1949.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that. Quite
That
right.
that was a little thing because that was the year I joined the army, and there was quite a few Newfoundlanders that had joined the Canadian Army then.
Oh, okay.
I
yeah.
think they were. I think during the war they were part of the British Army.
Yes, that does sound right.
I think that's the way it worked.
But as you say, the whole Commonwealth was really pulling together.
Oh yes,
for this,
but there is the matter of organization.
yeah, I bet across an area that huge. So we're going to get to your Army service presently, but I guess finally the day comes in 1945 when the war when Germany surrenders, and you were about 15 by that point.
Yes.
Thereabouts.
Yes.
So what was your personal feeling and the feeling in the community when the news finally came through?
It was one of relief and one of elation.
I bet. Okay. And big party.
I would say about that that I don't think Canada had a very big role in the war in the Pacific.
Right.
There was concern, of course, on the West Coast, but mainly all of our effort, Army, Air Force, Navy, it was all, or it wasn't all, but it was, I think, more strongly against the Germans.
Right.
Partly because that's where it started first.
Quite so. So the day, I guess it was May 8th, 1945, Germany surrenders. That was the ball game, so to speak.
That was great elation then. That certainly was it.
Parties, or did everybody just
Well,
sort of sit back?
I
and
can
go,
remember
"Phew"?
them being around downtown, and I was downtown. I can remember that. I can remember one guy in an army uniform caked in flour. He was just white.
How did that happen? I wonder.
I don't know. I wouldn't even want to guess.
He was having too much fun to worry about it. All right, fantastic. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come right back. back. So, Bob, you mentioned earlier that you joined the Army in '49, and that's right, not just a couple years or not even before the Korean War takes place.
I joined the Army. I can't remember exactly why, but part of a number of reasons. But when I joined, I was told there was no organized units of the Canadian Army serving outside of Canada.
Okay.
There might have been a few individuals serving somewhere in embassies or something like that,
Sure.
but until Korea started, that's when it changed.
Yeah. You say there were a number of reasons why you joined up. Can I inquire what some of them might have been? So.
Well, I wanted to get away from Owen Sound.
Okay.
The idea of being in the Army was part of it. Restlessness,
Sure.
various things.
Right
But,
on. Yeah. So having joined up. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember. I remember I was just really little and going to one of the cenotaph, and they relay wreaths. One says World War I, World War II. One says the Korean War. Now I'm like 7 or something at this point. I'd never heard of the Korean War. It was totally caught out of left field, and it strikes me to have another conflict with the war, Second World War, like it wasn't all that long before. How did it strike you? How did you feel about the idea that World War II rather wasn't all that long ago, and now we're in another war? Was that frustrating or shocking to you, or?
If I thought about it, and I made it a point not to get too deep into that, but it could have been scary.
Okay.
I could say when we arrived in Korea, I remember clearly the morning that we landed in Busan, and the thought was, are we going to be caught over here in another disaster like Hong Kong?
Oh, right, because when the Japanese took Hong Kong, that was a very nasty.
Yeah, well, there was
business
there was what
That's-
was it? A couple of thousand Canadians involved, I think.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that. So what? When you joined up, what was your training process?
Well, all my life I've been a mechanic, mostly on trucks, and that was very early in that career.
Right.
They accepted me to be a mechanic and so on. I was trained for that after my military training and so on, and that was the job I did.
Okay. Yeah, you went on to work for Ministry of Transportation or Highways.
That was
after
later on.
the war,
Yes,
didn't you? Yeah.
that was later on. But,
Right. So that was working on the vehicles was your role in the military as well.
It was really what I wanted to do and what I did do, and as a matter of fact, as a hobby, I'm still doing it.
That's right. Yeah, you're up at Grey Roots with the garage there, aren't you?
Yes, I'm deeply involved. In fact, I was up there this morning.
Yeah, when I was at Grey Roots, you saved my bacon one day because I was working in the blacksmith shop and the crank came off my bellows, and I was like, well, this is a problem. I better find somebody who knows mechanics. Bob's across the field. I'll go over there. So thank you, by the way.
I do recall that, yes.
You had to do a fair bit of zipping around the country in the process of training for in process of being in the Army, as I understand.
At that time, they were still reorganizing to the peacetime Army.
Okay.
After World War II, and as part of the military training side of it was done at Berryfield, which is just the other side of Kingston.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then I was sent out to what had been a veterans reestablishment school in Saskatoon. 8 weeks there to take the basics of mechanics.
Right.
And then after that, I was posted to Borden.
Ah.
And that was when I actually started the working on vehicles.
Right. Borden, where is Borden? I'm just trying
Camp
to remember.
Borden, Ontario.
Manitoulin Island.
No,
Isn't it that way?
over near Barrie.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I got my signals the wrong way around. Okay, and then when did it come about that you shipped out to Korea?
They made up the brigade. They had an advanced workshop, and they had some LADs, that's light aid detachments. They're right with regiments that need support by repair people.
Right.
I was part of a base workshop that they formed to support the brigade in Korea.
Okay.
But halfway through our year there, they realized they didn't really need it, so they disbanded the workshop.
Okay.
But I was really lucky there. I ended up one person of a part of a detachment of 7 that remained in the location where the workshop had been.
Okay.
There was 120 in the workshop, so that was a good posting.
Yeah. So you were able to stay on there. Right. Was it right till the end of the war then, or?
Well, I stay. The tour of duty in Korea was 1 year.
Okay.
So I was in Busan most of it. The only part the bunch of us from there were sent up with the Canadian Brigade toward the end of the time I was there to inspect all the vehicles the brigade had.
What was it like up there?
Not as comfortable as Busan.
Uh-huh.
In Busan, we had a wooden floor with a squad tent over it and a
Okay.
couple of stoves in it.
Uh-huh.
Further north, they had the same tents but no floor.
Oh boy. Okay.
And further north, it was a little bit colder. It did snow.
Okay.
There would be a couple or 3 mornings during that time that we had 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground. It wasn't very comfortable.
Right. Did you get out? Did you get time to go explore Busan and see the sights at all? Or I've never been to Korea, so I don't know
I
much
had
about it.
I had one R&R leave, rest and recreation. I think that meant I had one of them in Japan.
Oh, cool. Okay.
The highlight of that in my mind right now is I rode through or past Hiroshima on a train. And of course, they had had some time to recover from the devastation of that bomb.
Sure.
But a lot of them were living in shacks about the size of a one-car garage.
Oh my gosh.
They had there was a lot of buildings like that. We didn't even stop. I mean, I was interested. I was certainly watching, but on the other hand, at that age, I wasn't as interested as I might have been 10 years later.
Well, so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.